Hello guys and welcome to my video about the new Krejcik Gambit. Now, since this is another Gambit, it's very interesting. This Gambit requires a lot of tactical precision if you want to actually, play this. It takes a lot of tactical precision to play this, and there's lots and lots of theory. I could explain it all to you. But how about we just watch the video, because this is so confusing if you don't realize it. There's so many variations, many variations. As usual, it does have a few tricks, but maybe not as much as the John Tracy variation. But it's still decent. I probably wouldn't recommend to those who are actually more advanced, but I might recommend it to those who are beginners because it's more likely that they'll fall for these tricks. Okay, let's start off with e4. This is the Krejcik's Gambit. We've seen this. Krejcik's defense. Then we go into the Krejcik variation, giving up this pawn for attack on the f7 square. The computer doesn't like that, but we're not going to listen to the computer right now. So after knight takes, bishop takes f7, sacking the bishop, so we can get queen to h5. Now, there's two ways we could go about this. The way that's more common would probably be g6, but I think that's the worst way. But for now, let's see what... So g6 is the main line. The whole point is to go g6 after here, you just take the knight. But the computer's line actually went king to g8, which is also a very understandable move. It moves the king back without having the implications of the g6 pawn going up. So then you just fork the knight and the king to gain back the lost piece you got from the bishop. After they block with e6, you have queen takes e4, and you have a queen in the middle of the board, and your opponent's king is sort of displaced. So I don't know how many of you guys out there actually like this position, but to me, I would feel a little bit uncomfortable that my queen is out this early. But for some of you guys, I think you might not mind. If you're actually going to play this Gambit, please watch the end of the video so you guys can actually understand the theoretical concepts and the many theoretical ideas. So, after the traditional move d5, trying to kick this queen out. As you notice, this pawn is defended adequately by the bishop, if you didn't notice. And the queen goes back to e3, which is the standard move by the computer. After e5, just going forward with the pawn, you have knight to e2. Now, if we turn on lines and then we go okay, why can't we just take this pawn? It's because after you take the pawn, apparently, you have knight c6, kicking back the queen with tempo, and this queen is the only thing out, so this knight has the development advantage. So when the queen goes back to e3, you have, after a move like bishop to f5, you have black has a development advantage, and this queen is your only developed piece, but as infamously, the queen is not supposed to be out in the opening. So you're sort of in a bad position with two developed pieces already steering down your side of the board with this queen by itself. So knight e2, just a well thought out developing move, because if you let's say if you move knight to f4, you just have the move here, and then this is just a little bit cautious because black has this pretty nice chain structure, while this knight has been moved 1, 2, 3 times in the opening. Okay, so knight e2, Wait, let's just delete this, no confusion. No confusion needed. Okay, so knight to e2, knight to c6, just protecting it against this pawn, just developing your piece. And you castle, because it's just a very nice developing position. You could also, I think, have pushed d3 in this position, just to open the bishop lines and maybe get a knight in there. Because right now you're being very passive about the center. Bishop to f5, targeting the weak pawn on c3. Then you push d3, making this bishop stare at a wall of pawns. After after b6, you have c4 striking back in the center. Since this area is extremely weak due to them having two center pawns and you only having one, you try to strike back with a flank pawn, and then it's queen to d7. If you're wondering why they didn't go d4, is because after queen to f3, you're targeting both of these pieces here, which is an uncomfortable position. They move queen to f6. Interestingly enough, queen to d7 looks like it does the same, but according to the computer, it wasn't as good. Because, I think it said it was a draw in the end. But black is slightly winning right now, just because we're in a worse position with the center. So, queen f6 is the main move for black. After knight to g3, putting pressure on the bishop on f5, you push the bishop back to d7, and I think this is 0.1 for white, because you have a very strong side on this. This king is just sort of cramped. This bishop is stuck here protecting this knight. This knight's not going anywhere because it's pinned by the queen, and then you can just develop normally by... I think you can't normally develop. I think knight here, and then bishop somewhere here would be an interesting idea for later on in the future. But for now, I don't think it's a very good position for black. If you think differently, you can tell me in the comments. Okay, after queen to d7, I think this is just preparing for the rook to make its move. You have knight to g3, attacking this bishop. In general, your pieces are very bad, and this bishop is actually extremely good. So it would make sense for white to try and get rid of it. After bishop falls back to g6, you take the pawn on d5 because you want to get some central control. So now the knight's threatening to go down here to fork your queen and your rook. And it might come back to attack this d5 pawn. Now, you might be expecting a move like queen to d2, but what's surprising is that actually the best computer move was knight to c3, allowing the fork of knight to c2. And it's actually extremely interesting, because before you guys think, what if, let's say queen back here? Well, then bishop just goes... If queen back here, bishop goes here, bishop takes pawn. If queen back here, doing this, and it's protected by the knight, so it wouldn't be a very good position anyways. So after the knight forks, you might be thinking, why doesn't he just take this pawn? Well, I looked into the position a little bit, and I found after bishop to d6, it was slightly ineffective, because it's sort of hard to play when you have both bishops bearing down on your position. So after queen to e2 here, you play bishop to e5, developing and unleashing an attack on this knight. After h6, h4, and then bishop to b4. Then the rook takes a3. After the bishop takes, pawn takes, and then queen takes the free pawn. You play d4, striking back in the center. He takes d4, and then you put this rook here, Just putting this really nice pin because if pawn takes any of these pieces, you just take the queen. They defend it, and then you just take. So they've pushed forward their pawn. Now they have a pass pawn. So your queen goes here, attacking the bishop. The king goes to protect, and then you put h5. If you notice, this looks really weird because you just put this on safety, but like, who really knows what the computer thinks at all? After bishop to d3, you sack the knight for a better passed pawn because your bishop can defend it going this way. After knight goes here, slightly attackish in an attacking form, but also defending both pieces here. The queen goes back, and then after, also, it's threatening checkmate here. For example, let's say your opponent moves here. This is the first trap. If your opponent moves here, it's just obvious checkmate. So the queen has to go back to defend. Similarly, any move here to the back rank files and any other move but d7 is actually a draw for some reason. I think the whole reason is now you're not on this file, so there's no way you can exert pressure on somehow defending this pawn. So after queen to e3, I think the pawn's just lost because it can't advance without being taken by the bishop. So queen d7, check, and you just go back. Queen f7, knight to d6. After this attacking, you sack the knight. But since you do this, the interesting thing is if you take this, you take the rook. It looks like you just blundered your knight, but no. After the move, you push the knight back, the king goes forward, this pawn goes forward to structure, and then you have a repetition of moves. Because nothing can block without being taken. And here, there's no real better move because you don't really have much tries as black. Your position's sort of struck down. If you try to advance these pawns, you still have this one pawn, which would be extremely annoying. So after this, it's a draw. And my friend, that was only one of the lines. Okay, thanks for watching the first part, and I'll come back to you with the next part very quickly because just click on the next part, please.